Hello, welcome to Invisible Walls. I'm Marcus. That's Ryan.
Hello.
That's Nick the intern.
Hello.
And Daniel Bloodworth.
Hey.
Let's crack on.
Good to see you. Whoa!
All right, first thing we're going to talk about is Lego City Undercover, which has been probably the one Wii U game I've been excited for since they showed everything or nothing, if you will, at the last E3 thing. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Pikmins and the Animal Crossings of this world. I can appreciate and enjoy a Mario, but Legos, I am a total sucker for the Lego games. Daniel, you reviewed it.
Yeah.
What did you give it?
8.4. Good score.
Okay.
I think it's definitely a step above like all the others. And unlike you, like I had kind of the opposite reaction when it was first revealed. It's like, okay, here's kind of a quote unquote generic Lego game that doesn't have any like popular characters tied to it. Is it going to be as appealing without those guys?
That's why it appealed to me. It appealed to me because you weren't a superhero or Harry Potter or it wasn't Star Wars. It was it was something different, and it was, to all intents and purposes, it looked like Grand Theft Auto Lego, which to somebody of my humor level I found phenomenally amusing and exciting.
And it almost is, right? I mean, you hop in and take any car you want. There's stuff all over the place to do.
It's an E10 rated version of Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, you run over people, you smash buildings, you jump over things. There's helicopters and boats and all kinds of stuff.
And you get rewarded for smashing stuff up with the super bricks.
Yeah.
So I got it on Tuesday, and I've been playing it almost non-stop. Let's get the first irksome issue out of the way. What's up with the friggin' loading times?
They're awful.
The Wii U has really bad RAM.
I had a shot where basically I had got to a waypoint. There's a 45-second load screen, about a 2-minute cutscene, and then another 45-second load screen.
And that happened more than once. I mean,
that's the regular.
And when you get to the police station, which is your hub, where you can buy the new cars and you can buy the new characters and unlock stuff. You get in there, and there's a 45-second load to get in and a 45-second load to get out. And honestly, if it wasn't for the music, which I haven't found repetitive, even though it is the same tune over and over, there is something about the music that's not irking me whatsoever. I'm loving it. It's
got that cop show funk going on.
It's got that 80s cop show funk. I mean, and that's what this game has in spades, is this
Spunk?
Funk.
Oh, okay.
It's got this 80s cop show vibe. I mean, you see that from, honestly, the first couple of cinematics where that you can say, all right, there's a Sherlock Holmes reference, there's Don Johnson from Miami Vice.
There's Dirty Harry, there's Columbo.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally a who's who.
Yeah,
the only one I didn't see was Kojak. Look that up.
Yeah, I didn't see him.
But I mean, that entire vibe
Matlock?
Later on, there's Starsky and Hutch references.
Starsky and well, that kicks in right again from the first intro. You see them coming in to the briefing room. You see they're the first two out the door, and those references, that witty, vein of references continues. I mean, there's the Matrix pastiche when you're learning kung fu.
Shawshank. There's Arnold Schwarzenegger. There's a lot.
Yeah, it's very self-aware, and it's in some of the other Lego games. I mean, the most recent one I played was Lord of the Rings. I found that self-awareness, that nudge, nudge, it got a little bit too much, and I think they'd focused in that one too much on putting those little bits in and aren't we funny, aren't we clever, and not enough on perhaps evolving some of the main issues that have happened with the game over the years, like the camera angles being a little janky. You complete something and you've got all those Lego blocks to pick up to push you into over the true true Jedi or whatever it is level
Yeah.
And the cutscene kicks in, and you're just watching in the background as the blocks are disappearing because you got the studs, so you can't pick them up. And they've changed that a lot. They seem to have really focused the engine a little more. Changing the engine a little more. The camera angle's still a little janky in a couple of places.
Yeah, I mean, there's still times where I miss jumps and I'm like, why did I just miss that jump? But I appreciate the fact that they have, this open world that has like a full, controllable camera when you're out and about. But then when you get into something where it's a little bit more crucial, they'll change it to a fixed angle when you're climbing up a building or something.
Once the load times are actually done with, is it pretty seamless? Like draw distances pop and stuff like
Yeah,
that?
I mean, there's a little bit of draw distance, that you can
Yeah.
see things popping in, but
Yeah.
it's not bad. It's not like out of the question compared to like most open world games that have that stuff.
And I'd say that given the amount that's going on the screen,
Yeah.
where you're always looking for a super block or a gold brick or whatever to unlock stuff, or just when you're in one of the faster cars and you're hitting the turbo, they have a blur effect, and you don't notice what else is going on.
Wait, but you did play Lego Lord of the Rings?
I did.
And this is bigger, right?
This seems
Because that
much
was
bigger
kind of the
than me.
debate we were having with Jeremy, right? A little
Yeah,
bit.
we weren't sure because I hadn't played Lord of the Rings and I'd played a lot of the previous ones.
Well, it seems bigger to me, but it also, it seems that because it's more open and not necessarily level driven as the Lord of the Rings and all the other games were, where it was like, okay, level, cutscene, level. You've got this huge hub. You've got this open world environment where you do have the levels that you can then access off
So
from it.
going off of that, I mean, there's still the kind of the faint glimmer that the Wii U is could be more powerful than a 360 or a PS3. Does it seem? I mean, obviously it's bigger in that sense, but like visually, it looked on
It
the same
looks
level
about the same level
as
to
like the
me.
Harry Potter.
And the other
game
thing
or
too
the
is
Batman
that
game.
they are this is an exclusive game, so like they are able to tune that to take advantage of that power rather than making a game that can also play on the Wii.
I don't see any reason why this couldn't come to the 360 or the PS3.
Do you think it'll be a timed exclusive, maybe?
No,
no,
Nintendo
it's-
published it.
did
Nintendo
they?
published
Okay, I
it.
didn't
It's
know
got
that.
Which-
the gamepad in the game.
Oh, okay,
It's
yeah.
got other like Mario references and stuff here and there.
And I
Which
gotta
is
say-
the next question, though. I mean, do you feel like there's the Nintendo difference? Because it's still TT Games, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you feel like Nintendo did have their finger in
I
this
wonder
beyond,
if they did.
beyond
I mean,
publishing and marketing? And let's be honest, they did definitely put this in your face.
Yeah.
But is it the question is have they chosen a proper game to put on a pedestal and rise, or is this like another Steel Diver where it's like, why did this happen? Why is this
I
being
gotta say,
promoted?
this is the most fun I've had in my Wii U.
But that's not saying much. I mean, when was the last time we had a Wii U game?
Right.
I mean, no.
But I mean, I
Rayman,
feel like
Well, no,
and
I-
April's just as. I mean, I know there's some more ports. Like, what did we just get? Like Need for Speed.
Need for Speed.
I like,
But I
I
mean,
like
it's still been
Mario Brothers Wii U. That was kind of fun.
that
I
was
like
4 months
Zombie.
ago.
I like Zombie. But again, I mean, this is the first. It's funny. I haven't had any Wii U games since just after Christmas, and then I had Monster Hunter, and this one hitting this week. I got to say,
Upward as well.
this is. I would say this is a great game on the Wii U.
Yeah.
I would say it's probably one of the best games on the Wii U. Could it be on any other system? Yes. Do they implement the gamepad really well? Yes, they do. It is very intuitive with the way you pick up the video calls and you can map your waypoints, and it really does show the gamepad in a great light.
Yeah, and I like that you can like find spots to take photos and then put them on Miiverse and stuff like that. It's all really well
Like I'm going to do
connected.
that.
But I mean, could Microsoft hypothetically do this with Smart Glass?
Yes, but
I mean, maybe not to all points, but
Yeah.
a lot of the points.
Yeah,
Probably, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
You wouldn't call this a system seller, right? For someone who's like kind of on the fence about Wii U, I mean, it's
I would
No,
say it's
not
the best.
necessarily, but-
It's one of the best of the bunch, and I would
Yeah.
say if you like the Lego games, it is a step up from the previous ones for all the points that I listed.
With one
listed earlier.
exception.
I don't think it's a negative, but Bloodworth.
Yeah, the fact that co-op play is not in this game just struck me as bizarre because I was planning, to play it with one of the other guys, and then I went to do it and I was like, wait, how do I connect? And I went back and got the fact sheet and it's like, nope, one player. And that is insane to me because since Lego Star Wars, they've always had co-op. You just drop another player in
And they did that
play
cool thing
you.
with the split screen that
Yeah,
merges
they
together.
did that really nice split screen later on.
I will say I've got nothing but respect for you, but you're talking bobbins. Honestly, this game more than any doesn't need co-op. I could see co-op working in the previous games where you had a multitude of different characters you were switching back and forth from. I think the narrative this time around, you are playing one character with different disguises, admittedly, but I don't think it needs co-op. I think co-op is a crutch that too many people lean on, and I got to say that
But
anybody.
no, I mean this is the thing though. Like I personally don't care about playing these games co-op. I've never really played them co-op except to get that footage.
So what's the
But I
problem?
understand the audience. The audience is, I want a game that I can play with my son or my daughter. And it's not too stressful to have. You don't like need somebody to do this specific thing or anything like that. You're just together in that world, in that space, playing together. And
there
this
are
game,
umpteen
it
other
doesn't
games
have
that
that.
do
It
that.
doesn't have any kind of gamepad assistance.
You
It's
don't
just
need it.
you on your
You
own.
You don't need it. There are so many other games out
But
there
it's
that
that
have
outlet to
co-op
spend
dropped
time
in.
with somebody else. You
But
know,
not on the Wii U.
I don't buy games to spend time with other motherfuckers. I'm sorry, pardon my language. I buy games and I play games to escape from the real world, to enjoy what the programmers have put together.
And how many hours did you log into World of Warcraft?
Yeah, but as I've
Were
said,
you in a guild of one?
I was initially I was in a guild with Matt Frary, and that was there was 4 of us, I think. But then I stopped doing any team up quests or anything like that or going on raids because I just liked exploring and playing the lone wolf in MMOs, which is an oxymoron. But
right.
I'm
I
an
mean, I have a lot of the
antisocial
same
bastard.
play styles, but I know that that is a real deal breaker for a lot of people.
seems to go-
And those people who are saying it's a real deal breaker are fucking stupid because they're missing out on probably the best Lego game of the bunch, the most fun I've had with a Lego game.
Yeah.
And I play them all since Lego Star Wars, the original trilogy, which was the first one I played. I didn't play the prequels until way later. But yeah, this is a great Lego game. It's fun on the Wii U. It's designed for you. It doesn't have to be in this. Sorry, I'm going to go on a rant here. In this day and age, there are so many games out there that do co-op. You don't fucking need them all the time. Sometimes it's just to go back and enjoy that games are there for the individual. And thank God they didn't put co-op in there. Nick.
Yeah, I was just saying that going back a few months, I think it was Shane and Ryan went back and forth about is it fair to dock a game for something you expect as opposed to just judging the game, completely disregarding what's come before and just judging the game as it is. And that seems to be the 2 points. And I kind of agree with Marcus. I mean, if it was fun for what it is, I mean, if you came in expecting something and it wasn't there, I mean,
There's no absolute rules for reviewing.
Yeah,
games.
exactly,
That's
exactly.
what it really comes down to. And there are expectations, but there's also history. It's not like you're a blank slate every time you play a game for the first time.
no,
you
totally,
know?
and it's totally reasonable to expect something. But yeah,
And
this is
a Telltale's Lego game. You should address that there is no co-op because that has been part of the series.
Well, I mean,
You have to address
you're
it.
not. Look, I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, I felt that co-op has always been put in there, and I could see how it's worked in the past in the licenses with the different characters, and it seems more of a fit there.
No, I mean,
it
I
just
can-
doesn't. It putting it in just for the sake of being
No,
consistent
I mean
to the
that goes
series
to
is ridiculous.
That goes to a bigger problem with co-op where people have these kind of expectations. Like people get angry if there's a second Master Chief, or if the plot doesn't take into account. Dead Space was cool because it actually, Dead Space 3 was cool because it actually really intelligently introduced that second player. There's no stupid AI character. Obviously, everyone had some problems with Sheva.
Right.
this is a Lego game though. Does it need like a cohesive
No, it
narrative
doesn't.
implementation to
But
co-op?
this
I
one
mean,
does.
just throw
This one
another
does actually
little
have
dude in
more
there.
of a story, right?
It does.
Yeah, it has all the
I
voice
mean,
acting
for
and
what it's
everything,
worth,
yeah.
I know, and it's personal preference, and that's what's great. Is everyone has varying opinions, But I think it is important to definitely mention, and I know people in this office who, they play these games with their kids and young kids, and that is a deal breaker.
You know what? They can go off and they can go back and play with the young kids when Lego Marvel Superheroes comes out, whatever it's
Is
called.
it still as easy? I mean, is there zero penalty for dying and stuff still?
Yeah, I
If
mean,
you
there's
just respond
no
like
real
that-
challenge, but it's more engaging in other ways.
You lose
like
your studs.
Right, okay.
Combat is just it doesn't take any real thought to do the combat, but you have counterattacks and grab moves now. One thing I like is
Finishers.
that the character abilities. You really feel like you're getting something new each time. It's not like what Indiana Jones, like, here's the guy with the shovel. I'm like, great.
Yeah. No, I mean, I found myself playing more often than not with the crook and the miner.
Yeah.
Simply because the crook has the crowbar that you can jimmy open the doors, and then the miner gets to play with dynamite. And
Yeah.
at any level where there's dynamite, I just keep on dropping, just pulling
But
those things out of the
each
vending
guy has
machines.
like three or four different abilities, so
Yeah.
you actually get to use them. Even if one ability is a dud, like the astronaut has some stupid Simon Says boxes, but then he can teleport. So you kind of weigh those out, and so each guy, you don't have a single worthless guy except for the civilian. which is kind of just to put on funny costumes.
And I got to say, the way they work with the vehicles, I mean, they really do amp up the enjoyment of decimating the entire city.
Yeah.
There is a reward system in there that you need the super blocks to build these super large things.
And that's one of my favorite new things. It's like bringing like actual some building element back to the Lego games. And I would love to have something that's a little bit more interactive, but having that extra layer of you know, I went over here and I built like a huge sandcastle or a giant bridge or whatever. And now I really want to, like those super bricks are now the new gold studs. Like you want to get those rather than anything else.
What is the destructive capabilities of you? Like, can you destroy a building?
You can destroy anything that's made out of Lego.
Yeah, no,
for the most part.
a lot of the buildings, they're not made of. You don't have the big skyscrapers, so it's not like Hulk Ultimate Destruction.
So
is there like smaller, like huts? Are there?
It certainly
Sometimes.
is a more enjoyable city to troll around
Bigger,
than SimCity.
probably.
Bigger, about the same with load times. But look, I say, I know some people are probably going to get irked now we're talking about a Lego game, but this is a Lego game on the Wii U, a system that has been starved of really good product releases, and it is a great fun game. In fact, I would say that if you don't enjoy Lego City Undercover, you're a miserable fuck, basically.
But it is, it's consistently surprising, which is something, that I think is good to have, especially in a game like this where it feels routine.
It's fun, it's silly. I mean, it's just sheer enjoyment and escapism. Now let's talk about a game that I really didn't like. God of War Ascension.
Now, the question I have is, do you like the series? Because I think the general vibe is like even Rich Brown, who is behind the camera right now, who is the biggest God of War fan we know in the world, probably. Even though he bought the game twice, he still thinks this is probably one of the weaker entries.
I played God of War 3. I tried to get into it. I tried to appreciate it for what it was, and I don't want to come off sounding like a snob, but I got really kind of bored with just the repetition and just the linearity of it, if you will.
I can see that.
And it's just something that really sort of like it grated on me after a while. But then I wasn't a big fan of perhaps the original Devil May Cry games again, with this whole big 90-hit combo.
It's interesting you bring that up because a lot of when Devil May Cry, the first Devil May Cry came out, that was a game changer, right? Like it never had. I mean, it had success, but it never had, I think. I may get blown up for this, but I mean, I don't think it was ever that overly critical success. I know it sold well. It had a long-lived series. They totally fucked it up on 2, redeemed it with 3. But when, God of War came out, there was a lot of, it was kind of a dumbed-down, easy-to-go-through Devil May Cry. And I think that kind of, throughout the series, you talk about the linearity, how the puzzles, you're never going to be stuck on one of those for more than like a minute and a half.
God of War has some mind twisters. God of War 3.
3 did take it up an extra level,
Yeah.
I would say, the perspective stuff.
Oh my God, that was crazy.
But it was really, it was cool. I don't know if you got to that. It was a little later in the game.
Probably not, no.
It's these, and that is the game that I would say, kind of like a counterpart to the later Call of Duties, is it's just set piece after set piece after set piece, which some people can get upset with when it's, it feels kind of like you say, linear or overly scripted. But if you do it to a certain degree, and the idea that you kind of just go through it, like, if you die, you're going to respawn, your health's there, restored a bit, and you just kind of go through the motions, it's kind of like being in like a fugue state almost. Like you go through the God of War games, it's kind of a pure line, the story's not really convoluted or anything. Even with all this stuff happening, it's easy to follow. There's a lot of big scenes and stuff like that, and you kind of go through it. It's kind of like a popcorn movie. It's a popcorn game. Maybe you're a little snobby.
I like my
Usually
popcorn.
that's me.
I like my popcorn games. I do like just some of the mindless stuff. I mean, hell, we just talked about Lego City, where the objective is to demolish stuff, build stuff, and play with cute Lego toys. And I mean, that's not exactly
I will say, but this goes with something, it's franchise fatigue, and this isn't a game that subtract the PSP games. This has not been an over-milked series, but we're what, 7 years into this console cycle now? I mean,
something like that, yeah.
Things are just starting to feel really the same. I mean, and that's the same reason, everyone liked Sleeping Dogs, everyone liked Darksiders, but they're not selling because people have already played these games. Yeah, the real upper echelon, GTA is going to sell. Assassin's Creed is going to sell, right?
Yeah.
Bioshock.
Hopefully, God, I hope so. But I think there is this kind of thing where like God of War 3, first HD one. I mean, they even went on record like, how's it different from God of War 2? They're like, it's an HD and things are bigger, which is it's like the most obvious thing you can do. They're not really taxing things, and in any like regard, like I feel like gameplay wise, going from 1, 2, and 3, they were all pretty similar. They actually, I think, made more tweaks in Ascension than any of the other games.
Right, and the combat and stuff.
The combat's it's a little more
weapons.
skill focused this time, but I would also say, they kind of the games. How far have you gotten, Nick?
I want to say halfway.
Okay, I would also say the opening's still interesting, but we've already seen the giant titans.
Yeah,
We've seen the movie.
I mean, that's
things.
sort of a staple of God of War, right? It's like almost mandatory that they start with a
Since
bombastic,
the Colossus of Rhodes,
boss that's like
But then I would say the second couple hours of that game is a little slow. Like as you're gathering all the elemental powers, it's not bad per se, but it's a real step down.
Well, it happens. The frequency of it was something that hit me as kind of strange. Like in the last few, you'd find these new weapons, get the barbarian hammer, yada yada yada, and it was a progressive sequence throughout the game. This one, it's like, we're gonna give you these first 4 elemental powers within like 20 minutes of each other, and then you can use them, and you're like, well, I'm glad I have them for the rest of the game now, but it seemed kind of disjointed from the plot. It's like, why am I getting these, and what are they doing here?
Well, I mean, isn't part of that franchise fatigue is like, we're prequel land. It's like, who cares what happened before? I mean, that's something for a little bit of extra backstory or whatever. But you feel like
it's a prequel, but it's almost like a prequel,
third prequel.
that gives the option of yet another prequel. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't show what happened, what happened to Kratos' family before that. So, maybe it would have been more interesting if you were playing as Kratos, where you have to, you lose your family during the game.
That's the impression I was under.
start out
when they
as
announced
helping
this.
people.
And as opposed to, starting
the
off
mortal.
with Kratos, up there being taunted by a Fury. And look, I'll be honest with you. I think, and a lot of people love Kratos, but he's the Jean-Claude Van Damme of video game
I'll
characters.
give you that.
I'll go on
There's
record
no
right now. I have
personality
not
in there.
actually played any of these games because I can't even care
Well,
about
that's
Kratos.
the thing. There is no personality in there.
He's one-dimensional. He's
He's
literally,
not even one-dimensional. He's dimensionless.
He's vengeance. He's vengeance, and there is not a lot of character. He likes and they do the little things, and I know a lot of people like to call to the part in God of War 1 where you like hug your family and like regenerate their health. I'm trying to remember.
It's like a dream sequence.
Maybe I think that's maybe interesting, but I think maybe people put maybe a little too much accolades on that particular section. But it is a straightforward story for the most part, and there's not like the whole time I thought there was going to be this twist in Ascension because I'm so cynical with these, like, I'm going to be betrayed and the entire game going to happen, and right at the end of the game I'm like, oh, here it comes, and no, it was played out exactly like I thought, and I can actually kind of respect that. And it's not a complicated story, but it works, and it's not, and I'm so used to getting into these convoluted things that don't go anywhere, or I'm more impressed with the atmosphere than the actual story. A simple telling of something with, the Greek mythology, they use the Furies like in the proper sense. It's interesting to me, and
We're calling him one-dimensional, but would it make any sense to characterize him other than a brutal psychotic? Like, if we try to paint him as like, oh, this like forlorn warrior, and then he goes and rips a Minotaur's horn off and stabs him with it, you're kind of like, that's kind of inconsistent.
If he's going to be this brutal psychotic who is hell-bent on revenge against the gods who killed his family, let's for that to have any impact, you need to show what he was like before that. And I will give you an example from cinematic history. Let's look at Gladiator with Russell Crowe. I mean, you could see why he was doing it because they did the setup, and maybe that's what they need to do with the setup. I mean,
that was addressed in 1, but he was already like a brutal Spartan, and again, I don't think that was something that they were really. I mean, what, enemies teleport in, right? It's like, I mean, it's not. The game's kind of more like, even the story, I think it's more heavy on allegory. I mean, you're using Greek myths to kind of to distill. Put up virtues and stuff like that. And yeah, it's not going to be a perfect fit, But it's an interesting vehicle for telling a story, and I actually thought, 3 in particular, I thought actually had some interesting points, towards the end with what's happening. I actually am, color me surprised, but I'm actually somewhat curious, like where the story would go for a God of War 4, not a prequel, but continuing the game, which yeah, maybe for Mass Effect I cared for a while about the story, but like in general, I'm much more like I would rather soak in atmosphere than really care too much on where the narrative's going, even though I feel like those things kind of have a balance with each other.
I think they go hand in hand, and I don't feel in God of War. I mean, like I said, I preferred God of War 3 way over Ascension, but I don't. Think,
I as well.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say everyone did.
I don't. But I mean, that's damning it with faint praise
Because you didn't like 3.
Because I really just think from what I have played of the God of War franchise, I think it's derivative. I think it's old-fashioned. I think it harkens. It harkens back to a gameplay style of 10 to 12 years ago, and I think and look, I understand your appreciation of the not putting the plot twists in. I can certainly get that, because there's nothing worse than a half-assed cockamamie plot twist that goes nowhere just for the sake of a plot twist. So I can definitely appreciate a just flat story from from A to B, but when you are just regurgitating the same gameplay styles over and over, when you are totally linear and being led by the nose, when you do have a hero with all the personality of a 3-month-old turd, I mean, that to me is not something that is deserving of praise. That's not something as deserving of any accolades whatsoever. In fact, it should be deserving of ridicule, and it's Walmart gaming.
Maybe not for you, but I mean, I do think the game's fun. I do think it does feel a little bit tired. I think it's just, I mean, not to circle back on myself too much, but it's like, it's mass market done well. Like I see, as these bigger games have to sell to more people, it's kind of like how, we've talked about this in the past, like Assassin's Creed has all these systems and abilities, but still almost anyone can fumble through that stuff because they want you to continue. I heard a little bit of an aside, but I heard an interesting thing from one of the Telltale guys. They were talking about if you're making episodic games, make sure they're easy so people can get to the next chapter, or you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot, which I thought was pretty interesting.
There's a difference between easy, though, and there's a difference between easy and there's a difference between boring and formulaic.
Well, this one focused on finesse. I feel like
more than the
past ones.
Yeah, like again, the first, I don't know how far you got, but the first 30 minutes maybe not so much. But once you start getting, like around when you're getting the elements, I feel like the game actually has a bit of a difficulty curve where you're not going to be flummoxed or stopped, but you're going to maybe have some difficulty maintaining the rage meter, which is like gameplay-wise is probably one of the biggest changes. Because before it was like you gain rage, be invincible for what, like 10 seconds, 5 seconds.
I hardly ever use that in the old
Yeah,
games.
you forget about it. I mean, even the and then the game's big. If you want to say the game has a twist, the game has a gameplay twist, which we all saw with the without going into too much detail. There's a video on the site though, but the elevator ride, where suddenly the game asks you to make use. And more games should do this. Make use of your full skills. Make use of your. I was never using my magic items, or very, very rarely, outside of puzzles. But like there's magical items that affect combat, and they're asking me like, use your magic. You have to build up that rage. You have to use your abilities. And it was interesting to see them kind of flip the switch and try to engage you in this kind of like penultimate section before like a final boss battle, which is in all regards actually a little bit lackluster despite sweeping cinematics. So it's actually an interesting game in a lot of regards. And there's this awful thing where there's kind of are reviews objective or subjective, and I may have given a little bit of a wishy-washy final thought on multiplayer, but I think a lot of it's going to be community driven and see where it goes, how exploitable the game is.
Well, let's talk about multiplayer, because obviously that was one thing that was dinged on Lego City, and is something that again I'm hearing from a lot of people that it's the saving grace of the game, that multiplayer is a lot of fun.
It's really 50-50. I mean, a lot of people. I mean, critically at least, there's a lot of people that think it's trash as well. I would say, I mean, we did a live stream, so we've kind of already went over this a bit, but there is a learning curve that's definitely steeper than like a first-person shooter, where it's like aim in the middle and shoot.
I mean, I've put more time into the multiplayer than the campaign, probably threefold. Yesterday, I just burned through it. I'm doing Poseidon because I feel like he's the least used, and I want to keep it diverse. There is a learning curve. Yeah, I mean it's really hard, and I'm feeling some serious balancing issues. I thought Ares would be kind of overpowered due to just like the generic bonus physical ability. You know, that's the most standard method of fighting, just hitting on the person. I thought that might kind of unbalance it. But Zeus, man, Zeus's elemental attacks, you can't do crap against those things. So balancing issues, glitches, surprising amount of glitches and bugs. I had this one crazy one where me and this dude were kind of going up and down a wall. Like I would climb up, he would chase me, and then we'd both fall off and do it again. And we were in this area for a second, and then he starts running away. I start following him, and you know, multiplayer is the fixed camera. They stick with the fixed camera. Mm-hmm. It stayed staring at the wall, and while my guy ran off by himself. And I'm like, that's not God of War. If there's one thing, regardless of your feelings about God of War, there's one thing. They've been known for a level of polish. And this was, I couldn't honestly believe this happened. Even in the campaign, you have that one ability where you decay stuff. You can like build stuff and destroy it essentially. And when that happens, this kind of like slow-mo filter comes over the screen. I did it once, and I was kind of fiddling with it because I wasn't sure how to work the puzzle, and the slow motion filter wouldn't go away.
Well, we had the hard crash.
Hard crashes between going from campaign to multiplayer.
I had an enemy get stuck in geometry, and I had to restart a checkpoint.
A lot of clipping, a lot more clipping than I've ever known in God of War.
But I hadn't had other than the hard crash and the one enemy spawn. I haven't had too many issues.
Yeah.
Didn't see too much in multiplayer, but I was on a debug unit. I'm curious.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's I'm really surprised and pretty disappointed that this
you're
doesn't
still playing
have,
it.
Oh, I'm playing it like a lunatic. Of all its problems, there's something strangely addictive about this.
There's nothing else like it. I mean, we're
there's not.
We're novelty vampires. You know, everyone always said you could never make Devil May Cry multiplayer. You couldn't make Bayonetta multiplayer. You know, I mean, the closest. Okay. Anarchy Reigns and Power Stone, like, you know, but Power Stone was always that kind of hybrid. It's a little bit like Street Fighter, and it's a little bit like more like Final Fight, right? Like a 3D brawler or something like that. And you know, I think, you know, Sony Santa Monica probably had to put a lot of time to try to make something. And I will say, you know, when it comes down to it, the multiplayer works on a base level, and that's impressive in its own self. But there's so much going on. They threw so much in there to make it work that I am really. It's a delicate house of cards, and I am curious if it's gonna, you know, if it's gonna have the legs to survive, you know, a month out. And you know, there's the season passes, and there's gonna be future stuff.
Definitely.
There's gonna be future stuff. So they're planning to support it, but.
No,
it's interesting.
And it would seem to me that, you know, again, going back to our Lego City discussion where I felt multiplayer doesn't need to be in there, that if they, you know, this would be more suited to multiplayer, and it's more of a it's brawling style multiplayer. It's full on brawl.
Yeah, it's
beating the shit out of each other. Dismemberment,
heavy attacks, special attacks,
lots of blocking,
parrying. That's one thing about this game that I think they really hit really well, is that you have games like. This is kind of a gray area because you're gonna have to go between multiplayer games and like fighting, like shooter games and fighting games, sorta. But like something like Mortal Kombat, there's so many abilities and defensive abilities and offensive abilities that it gets kind of overwhelming and kind of messy. And then you have some games, I can't really think of an example, but where it's just too basic. There's just not enough dynamic to make it skill based. This hits a really nice point. The amount of offensive and defensive abilities creates these really, really skill based battles. So as long, and one point I want to make, as long as it's one-on-one, if any more than two people get into a fight, all skill goes out the window.
I think that's such a funny thing. But you said you wouldn't want it to just be one-on-one battles and put it into a Street Fighter.
Well, one thing they do well is
I don't know if I agree with
divide divide game modes. So there's a four-person free-for-all on the big maps, so that spreads it out a lot. So it takes longer to find someone, but when it is, you're not as interrupted as often. And if you want to really test your skill, in my opinion, I think that's the best place to go. In the Favor of the Gods, whatever it's called, the 4-on-4. I mean it's a clusterfuck. It really is. I mean when you get both teams in one area. You can't. It's just particle effects everywhere. You cannot see what's going on.
There has been slowdown, especially if you have all 8 guys on screen. But it is interesting too because you were talking about how you thought everyone was going to be more Ares focused.
Yeah.
We were looking at some of the Poseidon abilities are actually really, team
Yeah, it's like
abilities.
team support and defensive.
it's
So
more
there
like-
is
it's more
the,
like the
I mean,
healer and the buffer.
but then there's the other. I know you're Mr. Sony, but there's still a ton of people who don't have Bluetooth headsets
Yeah.
on PS3.
I don't think you need to talk in that game.
I'm just saying, but teamwork could be an interesting thing because there's a lot of
Yeah.
holding in most of the main game modes. Killing people helps. Opening chests. They put in a nice, I feel like they definitely were inspired by what Naughty Dog did to third-person shooting with Uncharted and put in a lot of little flourishes beyond just the main cover shooting game. A little bit of the climbing. But it's interesting that it is actually location-based, map-based, holding the shrine points or
it's
whatever. It's
it
actually
has the
really important.
Dynamic maps plus this conquest domination play.
Yeah.
It has the points, and then that leads you into these big kind of campaign, set piece moments, but that are interacted in the multiplayer.